Trump administration putting Democrats on notice. EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin came to Capitol Hill this week slamming the left's fear-mongering over the climate.
In order to justify, for example, the 2009 endangerment finding, they were adopting the most pessimistic views of the science. And just because you take exception when a member of Congress says in January of 2019, then 12 years, the world's about to end, if we're sitting here today saying, well, gosh, it's only 4 years and 9 months left, I don't think the world is about to end, they want to vilify you. What won't get referenced by your colleagues on the opposite side of the aisle who bring up the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund is that the money was going to former Obama and Biden officials. The money was going to Democratic donors.
And then Zeldin stumped House Democrat Rosa DeLauro on a landmark Supreme Court case.
Loper-Bright Supreme Court case, you familiar with it?
No, maybe others are not, but let me ask.
But that's really important. As a member of Congress, Loper-Bright says that we as an agency don't have the authority to get creative if Section 202 of the Clean Air Act.
No, but you don't have, excuse me, you do not have the right to say climate change does not exist, that it's a hoax, and that's where this administration is coming from.
I understand you're upset that you don't know what Loper-Bright is. Do you know what the major policies doctrine is?
I'm upset because...
You know what the major policies doctrine is?
You know what, let me just
You're a member of Congress. You should know.
DeLauro was caught speaking on an issue she appeared to not have knowledge of, so she lashed out.
I want to make the claim that we're just giving up on the work of the Enforcement and Compliance Office.
Glyphosate.
Is that your question? I'd say don't. If your cup was filled with glyphosate, I'm telling you as the administrator of EPA, don't drink it.
Thank you so much for agreeing to what we need to do.
I don't know what the question was. You're holding up a cup saying glyphosate.
You know.
Don't drink it. Don't inject it.
Maybe you should try doing that.
Joining me now, EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin. That was a masterclass in how to handle those moments. I just have to pause for a second and ask, were you as confused as I was? The cup of glyphosate? What was she trying to get at there?
Yeah, totally confused. We were actually talking about a completely different topic, and then all of a sudden she's holding up a paper cup and yelling out glyphosate. I don't know what the question is. If you're asking me whether or not you should drink a cup full of glyphosate, no, don't inject it, don't ingest it. And, you know, obviously you just saw in the clip her response to that. Listen, when we go to the Hill, we prepare for weeks at a time. I mean, I have probably 1,000 pages in front of me as you think about every possible topic that could come up. So we're prepared. And if you're coming at us wanting to know why the Trump administration, in the largest act of deregulation, rescinded the 2009 endangerment finding, I'm going to cite the law, the best reading of the law, the Supreme Court cases that required me to do that and not get creative in making up my own law. And you better come prepared knowing the recent landmark cases of the Supreme Court as far as separation of powers and reining in regulatory overreach.
Yeah, your fluidity with Supreme Court case law on the spot was really, really impressive. I'm not surprised, Administrator. I also believe in media accountability, and I don't let things go. As someone who stood at that podium before and seen so many false headlines, I wanted to bring up one for you from the New York Times. It's from long ago. It's from 1995, and here's what the New York Times said at the time. As the most likely rate of rise, some experts say that most of the beaches on the east coast of the United States would be gone in 25 years. They are already disappearing at an average of 2 to 3 feet a year. 25 years would mean the beaches are gone here in the United States, but I've seen a beach recently. What do you make of that?
Well, the most offensive part of it is that if you questioned that in the mid-90s or in the years that followed, you would get labeled a science denier, that you're not even allowed to dig into those claims, to look at the science. And the reality is that when these predictions are made, they are the most pessimistic view of a science that oftentimes, as we found out, don't bear out. There are optimistic views and there are pessimistic views when you want to talk about sea level rise, you want to talk about the temperature of the Earth. And when the endangerment finding, what I was just talking about, was done in 2009, they were relying on the most pessimistic views of the science. Now, when you get to this point 17 years later, we can start relying on present-day facts rather than bad assumptions of the past. But the likes of Al Gore, AOC, John Kerry, they've said some ridiculous things over the years that just didn't pan out. And if over the course of that timeline, because, the future hasn't happened yet, if you disagree that something isn't going to happen in the future, they want to say that you're denying science. You're just pointing out that these people are relying on the most pessimistic view of the science, and you don't believe that it's going to actually happen. And, in the case of melting ice caps or removing the snow of Kilimanjaro or the world's about to end in 12 years predictions, we should be able to ask these questions without getting labeled and attacked.
Yeah, Rush Limbaugh's Al Gore climate change clock ran out a long time ago, and we are still here. I also want to ask you about the spate of political violence we have seen as recently as last week at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. You were a victim of political violence. I want to remind our audience of that moment in 2022. Watch this.
And there's only one option.
What is he doing? What is he doing? Why did they let him get up there? No, get up there. Hold on. Get Lee out of here. He's got a knife.
That individual came at your neck with an object, extremely scary. And I just want to know your reaction when you hear folks like Hakeem Jeffries doubling down on maximum warfare after a third assassination attempt.
Well, the people who follow these Democrat so-called leaders, they take these messages to heart. When Maxine Waters is telling people to confront Trump administration officials, to get up in their face, we saw how in the first Trump administration people actually were following through. We saw the Steve Scalise shooter, and thank God the Capitol Police were there, because you would have had up to a couple dozen dead members of Congress. You fast forward to the multiple assassination attempts on President Trump, the assassination of Charlie Kirk, and the other instances that happen in this timeline. Words matter. And when you move past the point, you run out of names to be able to call your political adversary, and all you're left with is calling them a terrorist, and you have to get to that next level of actually calling on your followers to physically confront political opposition. There are a lot of people in this country who will take you at your word, and they will start to do it. These words matter, and you should be leading the people who follow you as opposed to being led by them, which is really one of the biggest issues that we're seeing on this as far as Democrats in Congress and outside of government.
Administrator Lee Zeldin, thank you.